Welcome, everybody. Welcome to La Live 2023 and to our virtual Cafecitos. Virtual Cafecitos are a series of candid and insightful conversations that are part of La Live's industry programming, where we invite different organizations to share their perspective on the industry and discuss a variety of subjects of importance to the film and TV ecosystems. Today, our panel is presented by el Instituto Cervantes in Los Angeles. And this is a conversation that will be focused on the power of film and television in the evolution of language. And we're very honored to have with us Luis García Martín, who's the director of el Instituto Cervantes in Los Ángeles. Welcome, Luisgé.
Bien hallados vosotros y un placer para mí, un honor también estar en este cafecito.
So before we go into hearing more about you, I just want to briefly mention who are the rest of the panelists part of this conversation. So we have Dani Adalis, who's part of the festival with her project Chuchi and Adalis, who's a TV series that's part of our episodic works program. We have Clara Cullen, who's the director of Manuela, and she's part of our feature film official selection. And Rudy Valdez, who comes this year to the festival with the translators, part of our shorts program. Bueno, Luisgé, tell us a little bit more about yourself so we can give some context to the conversation.
Yo quiero empezar, yo voy a usar en esta conversación bilingüe que vamos a tener, voy a usar con permiso de todos el español, que es la lengua a la que me debo, a la que el Instituto Cervantes se debe. Y quiero empezar refiriéndome a una anécdota entre, supongo que las cientos parecidas que hay, que tiene que ver con un actor y cantante español, Fran Perea, que tiene ahora 40 y pico años y que triunfó absolutamente con una serie que se llamaba Los Serrano, que se emitió en toda Latinoamérica, pues en 2003 me parece que fue la primera emisión en toda Latinoamérica, en España, en el territorio del español, y le catapultó a los niveles de estrella. Luego, eso, como ocurre siempre en esta profesión, fue quedándose más en gris y él fue perdiendo estrellato. Pero, ¿qué ocurrió entonces? Que la serie empezó a emitirse doblada o traducida, subtitulada en algunos países, especialmente en Serbia y en algunos países de la antigua Yugoslavia. Y Fran Perea, que había dejado de dar muchos conciertos, volvió a tener una gira impresionante de conciertos en aquellos países, en Serbia, en Croacia, en países muy alejados de lo que tradicionalmente era su música o su gusto. Y el Instituto Cervantes de aquellos países vio que de repente subía la lista de alumnos que se matriculaban para estudiar español. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Quiere decir, sin duda, que el audiovisual en todo el siglo XX, pero mucho más en el siglo XXI y cada vez más, es un vehículo absolutamente impresionante para la transmisión cultural y para la transmisión de lo que es nuestra forma de pensar la vida y de pensar el mundo. Y el Instituto Cervantes y la LIF saben perfectamente que el audiovisual en español, rodado o escrito en español, vive un momento de gloria. Se están haciendo cosas maravillosas en México, en Argentina, en Estados Unidos, en español, en España, series, películas, todo tipo de audiovisuales. Y eso es algo que el Instituto Cervantes cree que debe ser aprovechado para el impulso del español y la difusión de las culturas de nuestros países.
Muchas gracias, Luisgé. So why don't we now get to our panelists to introduce yourselves and tell us about not only a project that you have as part of this year's official selection La Live, but also in your creative process, how language, what is the role that language plays in your creative process? ¿Cuál es el rol que juega el idioma en sus procesos creativos? Who wants to start? Do you want to start, Dani?
Yeah, I can start. Hi, my name is Dani Adaliz. I am one of the I'm one of the directors for episodes 1, 2, 4, and 5. I am one of the co-writers and co-creators and actors on Chuchi Natalie's. And sometimes I did Crafty. But yeah, I guess the Chuchi Natalie's is about a friendship breakup. It's about these two friends that, you know, grew up and had a connection in childhood. And one of their connections was their shared cultural and racial identity of both being half Afro-Puerto Rican, but like presenting the way that we do, which is sort of either ethnically ambiguous or Middle Eastern, like insert any Middle Eastern is what people think I am. They connect on that, obviously, but then like as they grow up, they realize that shared connection and like with the way the work works and the way that the world works and the way that capitalism works, like it just sort of like tears them apart because they're still trying to hold on to like that childhood connection. And as far as language goes in terms of how it, you know, translates into our series, we do the literal form of language where we do speak a little bit of Spanglish, which is the Puerto Rican national language. Or island national language. We do have a little bit of Spanglish in there. We do have a little bit of cultural like things that we pop in there. But also there's like the emotional language between friends, like something that I am really passionate about. I always joke that I have like the EQ of a PhD, but the reading comprehension of a 5-year-old. So that's like the thing that I hold on to the most. And I wanted that to sort of like translate in all of my films and all of the things that I worked on is like the emotional connection and how that is a language in itself and being able to like, you know, communicate emotionally, frankly, clearly, which I think is also a big part of like Latinx culture. Like I'm sure there's exceptions here and there, but I find Latinx culture to be very like open and frank and direct. And that's something that I personally really value and something that I like to put out there.
Thank you. What about you, Clara?
Hi, guys. Well, my name is Clara Cullen. I am originally from Argentina. Estábamos hablando con nuestros panelistas antes como qué quiere decir originalmente de dónde sos, pero vivo en Los Ángeles. Spanglish is very, very common in my house. I have a 6-year-old who grew up in Los Angeles but speaks very well in English. And I'm presenting my film Manuela in La Live this year. Manuela is about a Latin American who arrives to Los Angeles and is trying to find a job, and she barely makes it into the job interview and becomes the nanny of this 3-year-old Alma. And the film, in the very, very like the integral part of the film is about language, because there's all these kids actually in America that grow up with people that take care of them who speak to them in Spanish. And from age 0 to 3, which is before they go to school, their main language is Spanish, even though their parents are Americans. So as one of you guys were saying, like the Spanish language is conquering other cultures, and the way that I don't know. I grew up, and maybe you guys, I mean, some of you grew up in America, but like growing up in Latin America, you like consume so much TV films in English that sort of like takes over into your normal language. And I think right now what's happening is the other way around, which is like the Spanish language is conquering not only the American territory, but elsewhere. And I think that's very exciting as a Spanish filmmaker, Latin American Spanish filmmaker. And because it's like, it's having a seed that you can see that is growing in different places without you knowing. So I don't know, we can keep discussing all this, but I think it's a incredible time to be doing what we're doing.
Thank you. What about you, Rudy?
Hi, my name is Rudy Valdez, and I grew up in Michigan, Midwest Michigan. Couldn't get any more Midwest than like the center. Everyone put their hand up to show where they are. I'm from Michigan. I'm literally from the center of Michigan, and I grew up, the youngest son of migrant field workers, and my parents put roots in a community when I was born because they wanted me to have a different version of a life than even my older siblings and my parents had. And so along with that, just thinking about language, one of the things that happened with me that didn't necessarily happen with my older siblings was everyone spoke English to me. Nobody really spoke Spanish to me when I was, growing up and going to school, I think because they saw difficulties that other people were having sort of assimilating and being a part of the school culture and the community because of a language barrier. And so I was basically raised with my parents always speaking English and my siblings speaking English, even though they would, communicate to each other and argue and yell in Spanish. That's sort of how I picked up what I did. But, somewhere along the line, and I don't really know when it happened, going into adulthood, my mom started exclusively speaking Spanish to me. And so she speaks in Spanish to me and I return in English. And it actually took a long time for me to realize that she was doing it just because it felt so natural to me. But part of why I'm a filmmaker and part of what every story that I tell is dealing with with how I've navigated that sort of dual identity of even if I didn't speak Spanish, it didn't mean that I wasn't the brown person in the room when I walked into certain places and there were certain expectations put upon me. And even though my family always instilled in me that you're a part of this community, you get to do whatever you want, you're going to have all of these opportunities laid in front of you. When I started to look at media and books and music and things when I was younger, the people who looked like me were very much on a track, and there were expectations. They were, growing up, it was like American Me, and it was like, there were a lot of gang members and drug dealers and things when I looked at media, and I was like, well, that's not the track I necessarily want, but that's what was out there. And I would see movies like Stand By Me and shows like The Wonder Years, and I would always think like those seem to be the adventures that I want to be a part of and the things that I'm experiencing, but I don't see myself there. And so later on, when I became a storyteller and started making films, I wanted to always tell it from the POV of somebody who looks like me that can also be a part of these, stories and this fabric of this country, even though I look a little bit different. And, there's this whole idea right now, especially in the media to this day, like even last week, somebody was talking to me about a project and they said, you do speak fluent Spanish, right? And I was like, I'm like, I understand it, but I don't, but there's this expectation that this happens and that it's just something that's tough to navigate sometimes. But my short film that is in the festival is called Translators, and it's literally about first generation young men and women who navigate the world translating for their parents who don't speak English. And it's something that was brought to me, but I was drawn to because growing up, my parents had a little grocery store, a little Mexican grocery store that was kind of one of the hubs in our community. And there were many times when somebody would come in only able to speak Spanish, and they would tell my mother and my father, can you please come with me to the school? Can you please come with me to the hospital? Can you please come with me to the courthouse? Because I can't speak English. And I can't tell you how many times my parents just locked the door and put me in the car, and we were driving to the courthouse, driving to the hospital, driving to the school, because they understood the importance of that language barrier. And so it was something I was very drawn to. And I think that it's something that, while you look at that may be a problem in certain communities, it's a problem everywhere. This was Michigan that I was growing up in, you know, where there are very few people who, you know, you can go to a hospital in, you know, the Bronx, New York, and you can usually find somebody who works there that speaks Spanish, but you can't go to a hospital in Michigan, even to this day, and always be certain that you're going to find somebody that speaks Spanish. So it was very important for my family to be there and be able to make those translations. And so this project really spoke to me, and I wanted to be a part of putting it out into the world.
Wonderful, thank you. Luis, you had prepared some really interesting questions for each of them. Do you want to start with that?
De hecho, me gustaría comenzar justo enlazando con lo que Rudy decía ahora y haciéndole una pregunta a Rudy. Me gustaría que explicaras tu opinión acerca del valor que ha tenido la lengua como reflejo de la clase social, concretamente en Estados Unidos y en las décadas en las que tú y tu familia se unieron a este país. Corrígeme si me equivoco, pero creo que durante muchas décadas aquí en Estados Unidos el español fue la lengua identificada con la miseria, con la pobreza, con el pasado. Y había muchos inmigrantes que querían que sus hijos se olvidaran del español, no solo que hablaran bien el inglés, que habría sido perfectamente lógico, sino que olvidaran el español porque era una forma casi de bautismo, de borrar ese pecado original de venir de la pobreza. ¿Cómo crees tú que eso está ocurriendo o ha dejado de ocurrir ahora? ¿Han cambiado las cosas? Es decir, hay gente como Rudy Valdez, como tantos latinos que ya tienen una posición de prestigio en la sociedad, que hacen que el español ya no sea una lengua identificada con la miseria y con la pobreza, sino una lengua poderosa y que debe ser mantenida al mismo tiempo que el inglés?
I think you're muted. We didn't hear you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, can someone just translate so I understand the nuance of the question? Because there was like a little bit in the middle that I didn't pick up.
Yeah, it is, if you can talk about how throughout like your personal history and the time where you started also creating work, if you've noticed a change in the way Spanish is understood. Starting from the point where it was like the language that people wanted to get rid of because of the need for assimilation, but also because it's like living away, like getting rid of the past, of poverty, of like a condition of misery.
Mm-hmm.
To now understanding, if you think that now Spanish is understood in a different way through people like you who are in like the position to sort of like rethink the importance of Spanish.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, you know, it's spot on that early on there was sort of a class distinction with being able to speak English, I don't want to say properly, but, so that you can effectively communicate. And, I think that there was a little bit of the accent that my parents were always very cognizant of. And I did have a little bit of a, Midwest sort of accent, Mexican accent when I was younger. But, I then, funny enough, that was the first thing that happened in theater school, was they were like, let's get rid of that accent and make sure that you're speaking in a way that is, this Midwest dialect that is universal to everybody. And so, yeah, there always was this idea of stripping away. And I even go so far as to say my name, like people call me Rudy. I go by Rudy still, but that's not my name. My name is Rodolfo. And, I always wish, I wish now that growing up, I was strong enough then when I was a kid to say, no, my name is Rodolfo. It's not Rudy. Call me Rodolfo. But there was this weirdness around people being able to pronounce my name and say my name and call me Rudolph and call me all these other things. And so I became Rudy, and now I'm this adult male who goes by Rudy, and it feels like it's a little kid's name. But I do think one of the changes that has happened, especially with the sort of globalization of media in the world, is, as somebody was saying earlier, this idea that especially the Spanish language, when it comes to music, when it comes to comedy, when it comes to media in general, is starting to reach farther, the farther corners of the media, and it's now not really a something that people think is lowbrow, but really it's like you're more educated if you're also listening to stuff in Spanish and you're watching these things, and you're a person of the world that is able to understand all of these different languages. And so it's one of the reasons why I always sort of get upset with my mom for waiting so long to talk in Spanish with me, because I wish I'd known early on. And I wish that, I was always very proud of my culture and proud of who I am and what I look like. And I never shied away from that, but I just didn't have the opportunities and the knowledge base and the foresight when I was a kid to be like, I better really learn Spanish because I'm going to need it down the road. I was just trying to survive as a poor brown kid who, didn't quite fit in with the Mexican kids who spoke Spanish and didn't fit in with the white kids who didn't look like me. I was just trying to survive. So I was in my own identity crisis during that whole time. But I think that there certainly has been, especially over the past few years, and that's why people come to me and they're like, can you do more Spanish language stuff? And it's like, I can try, I can do some of it, but I also say maybe I'm not the right voice, because you probably want somebody who is a native speaker to do some of these things. But I do think that it is the idea surrounding language and the acceptance of language and what is thought of language right now is very different from earlier.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 2 young daughters. Yeah. And, what's funny is I had my oldest one when she was younger in a completely Spanish immersion preschool, because I was like, she is going to speak Spanish. I want her to speak Spanish. And the problem was, because I didn't have a strong grasp, is she'd be in Spanish immersion all day, and then she'd come home to me, and I would try for about an hour to say, okay, I'm going to speak in Spanish to you. And then finally I'd be like, go to bed. I can't, I can't keep, it was so like the mental gymnastics around trying to be able to be on my business call in English, be editing in English and writing in English, and then talking in Spanish. So unfortunately, while she does understand some of it, I still have to figure out how to bring more Spanish into her world. I play a lot of Selena, so hopefully that helps. But that's basically how I learned, listening to Selena and Los Dinos and La Sombra and all and watching La India Maria when I was a kid, and Cantinflas. Like that was my kind of how a lot of kids come to the United States and learn, by watching Police Academy. I was watching La India Maria and Vicente Fernandez and Cantinflas, trying to figure out how to speak Spanish. But yeah, so I'm trying to make sure that they are aware of Spanish, and it's not completely foreign to them as they learn growing up.
Dani, hola.
Hola.
Chuchi y Adalid comparten una identidad racial, una identidad nacional, pero son personas completamente distintas. Me gustaría que nos contaras, que contaras a las personas que nos están viendo, que nos van a ver, ¿cómo crees tú que determina la lengua en la que hablamos, lo que somos? O mejor dicho, me gustaría que reflexionáramos acerca de cuánto nos une una lengua justo a personas que no tienen nada que ver con nosotros. ¿Hasta qué punto, pues eso, seres antagónicos a través de la lengua se convierten en seres cercanos para nosotros? Y esto ocurre también, creo, con el cine, cómo algunas cosas, algún tipo de cultura o de película o de forma narrativa que no está muy cerca de nuestra personalidad, la lengua nos la hace más cercana. ¿Qué piensas de todo esto?
Ok, yo estoy pensando en cómo condensar todo eso, porque en mi mente era como like, okay, like identify, like figure out like what the, so I'm just gonna say it in English. So the question was, is you were asking me, how does language like play into the fact that these two people, how do these two very different people communicate, even though they have these identities and these things that are together, especially growing up in childhood, and how like that has changed over time? Was that the first question? Like roughly? Okay, good. I
Yeah.
speak Spanish. Okay. I was like, you know what? I'm over here like Rudy.
Not only communicate, but
Yeah, like how they act, like
love.
how like
Now
they're
you're just showing off. Now you're just trying to make me feel even worse about
Well, Rudy, my dad also threw me in a Spanish immersion program. And just like side story, funny enough, I loved that school and I spoke better Spanish. But then when I'd go to Puerto Rico to see my grandma, she'd be like, ¿pero qué es esto? Tú no estás hablando español, eso bien, no sé, tú estás hablando como una mexicana, no sé, nena. Like, so even that wasn't good enough.
You can't win. You cannot win.
It's never good enough. But yeah, and then I went to like some white kids school and I just learned how to read and write in English, and I was like made to feel like completely stupid for like the rest of my academic life. So, you know, there's that. This isn't about me, this is about my characters. So the way that my that our characters communicate, me and my co-writer and co-creator Ashley Sotopaniagua, we were very intentional on like what our comps would be. And our comps are basically if Molly from Insecure, who is the Adalys character, was best friends with Alana from Broad City, which is like the kooky, like, you know, self-aware, but like seemingly careless character, right? So we have like, you know, the joke is we have an Aries with an Aquarius, right? Like we have like this like sort of like direct, like fiery, like go-getter, like, you know, no patience kind of person with like a person that's really flighty and just is like sort of like go with the flow, but like pretty perceptive and like kind of knows how to put their foot down, right? So when we did that, it was like really important to communicate also like the socioeconomic differences between the two and like how their language has now transformed since they were children, because it sort of seems like Chuchi's character sort of like doesn't seem to really care about money because like her father kind of like always had her back. And Adalis's character is sort of like new to money. Like she works for a huge like corporate like airline company and then gets laid off. Like that's sort of like the thing doesn't get laid off. She gets fired for insider trading. So now she's coming to live with Chuchi, and Chuchi's just sort of like nonchalant and like, yeah, like you mean like I just like live my life the way I live it and it's fine. And like I figure out ways to get like shit for free. And then Adalis's character is kind of like, who are you? Like, do you have like no work ethic? Do you like not care about like how this looks? Like you're in your mid-20s, like get it together, you know what I mean? So it's like we're operating with somebody who communicates with like this security blanket and another person who communicates out of like, you know, necessity and fear and like struggle, you know what I mean? And when those two personalities sort of combine outside of childhood and into adulthood, and not only that, they're like living together in a small space, in a very small studio apartment, you know, all that kind of bubbles to the surface, you know, and all of like that, like all the memories and all like the times together kind of get thrown out the window. And communication styles are different. Like, you know, they haven't lived together. So like certain things about like keeping the house clean, or certain things about how they have their schedule. We kind of touch on that in episode 2. Like one person's schedule is a little bit more lax than the other, you know, and it just like it's sort of I guess like you see the evolution of the fall through like their communication styles and through their lack of or not lack of, like through their they both kind of have like a cognitive dissonance on like clocking in and like clocking each other's like personal tics, because they're not what they used to be. So hopefully that answered the question. I hope it did.
I think it did somehow.
Okay. I was trying to condense it because I know like we're getting short on time. So I was like, I have so much to say. So little time.
Clara,
Sí, Luis García,
tú ruedas en español y en inglés.
sí.
Eh,
O sea, hago lo que puedo en las dos lenguas. Sí, se llama.
obviamente, cuando haces un retrato de Tarantino o de John Waters, tienes que rodar en inglés por razones que no hay que explicar. Pero cuando haces
Sí,
creaciones propias, cuando contaste, por ejemplo, la historia de tu abuelo, creo que era.
abuela, sí.
Abuela,
Esto la
no,
hice en español, creo, sí.
sí,
Tiene partes en inglés también.
¿no te planteaste hacerla todo en inglés? Es decir, ¿cómo la decisión de la lengua en la que ruedas te...
Porque, mira, o sea, yo trabajo en inglés. O sea, creo que la lengua inglesa es maravillosa porque es muy práctica. O sea, viene del sajón, o sea, que es como construcciones, como ladrillos que se van poniendo uno arriba del otro para construir un sentido como práctico, corto y sin demasiados dobles sentidos. Ahora, yo trabajo en inglés en mi cabeza, sueño en español, me comunico en general en español, pero tengo todas las lenguas muy mezcladas. Ahora, cuando hago entrevistas a gente que habla en inglés, por ejemplo, a mí me viene muy bien el acento que tengo yo en español, que es porque es como que casi que, como que la persona te permite más franja de error, si querés, y una mayor franja de, bueno, quizás está diciendo eso, pero quizás no. Entonces, yo uso, digamos, esa trampa, si querés,
para hacer preguntas impertinentes, por ejemplo.
impertinentísimas, sobre todas las cosas. Entonces, con esa voz, vos, viste, como con un poquito como de acento, viste, le preguntás cualquier cosa a la persona y bueno, cae mejor si querés. Que si estuvieses hablando con un periodista como mucho más serio, viste, de CNN, tipo como que haya trabajado sobre el acento. Así que no sé si te estoy respondiendo a la pregunta, pero es como, yo me doy cuenta que las lenguas están como en diferentes cajones en mi cerebro y se van mezclando y a veces no, y diferentes personas acceden a diferentes lenguas, porque yo también hablo francés, parte de mi familia es francesa, o sea que es como También accedo al francés, al español y al inglés, que son las principales tres. Y ya una vez que tenés tres, como que se fluye mucho más rápido entre las lenguas. Pero el español es una bomba atómica, básicamente. Es una bomba atómica porque alcanza un territorio enorme, gigantesco, más que casi ninguna otra lengua. Y creo como que, nada, es un poder enorme. No sé si me querías preguntar otra cosa, Luis García.
No, te quería preguntar sobre eso, sobre si algún día quieres hacer una película que esté más cerca de los sueños, ¿la harás en español?
Bueno, la película que hice Manuela es mitad mitad. Mitad en inglés y mitad en español. Tengo un proyecto en español que sí me gustaría hacerlo. Y básicamente yo creo que o sea, hay mucha gente que trabaja de esta manera y hay otra gente que trabaja en un proyecto concreto y hasta que le salga. Yo trabajo en muchos proyectos al mismo tiempo y como que el que sale más es que es el momento que para que florezca ese proyecto, florece. Manuela apareció en ese momento y fue el momento para hacerlo, digamos, porque tenía como la oportunidad de filmar en Los Ángeles en ese momento. Y por eso es un Spanglish. Y me encanta porque ahora lo voy a ver en 15 años y me voy a acordar de ese momento de mi vida que vivía en Los Ángeles, que mi hija estaba aprendiendo las dos lenguas y que, y que y que como te decía, o sea, lo que te decía Rudy, que era súper interesante, y la pregunta que vos le hiciste a Rudy, que era súper interesante de cómo, digamos, en la cronología de los últimos 30 años, si querés, en Estados Unidos, el habla español pasó, si querés, de un sinónimo de pobreza a un sinónimo de estatus. Entonces, eso me parece como, la verdad que es un gran es una...
Y en este sentido, si Diana me da permiso, tenemos tiempo para una última pregunta para los tres a la vez.
Dale.
En este sentido, ¿creéis que llegará un día? Ahora mismo en Cannes, Pedro Almodóvar estrena su último corto, su última película, que es un corto de 30 minutos, en inglés. Pero Pedro Almodóvar, salvo esta película y La voz humana, que también era un corto, siempre se resistió a rodar en inglés. Hollywood siempre ha tentado a los grandes directores de otras lenguas, siempre. Algunos han aceptado esa tentación y otros se han resistido. ¿Creéis que llegará algún día en el que yo todavía pueda estar vivo, en el que ocurra algo a la inversa? Es decir, que haya directores, grandes directores de inglés, que ruedan en inglés, que piensan en inglés, que se vean tentados a rodar en español. Quiero decir, en inglés o franceses, bueno, en inglés sobre todo porque la industria es esta ciudad, es Hollywood.
Luis, perdón que tome la primera respuesta acá. Yo creo que ya está pasando y lo podés ver en series ahora, en Netflix, por ejemplo. Creo que Narcos fue como la primera serie como que dio vuelta a eso y como que fue una serie como que fue muy importante para el lenguaje español porque era una serie que salía de Netflix Estados Unidos y que la gente empezó a leer con subtítulos, pero eran personajes y historias que pasaban en Latinoamérica. Y no estoy segura de la lista de directores, pero estoy segura que algún director anglosajón trabajó en uno de los capítulos.
Dani, Rudy, ¿qué pensáis?
Well, I guess kind of like what Clara was saying, like it's already sort of happening, which is really exciting, and it's becoming more mainstream to like see more like Latin American, more Spanish language things, more diversity even within the Spanish language things, like in terms of like cultural diversity, because you know, we are not all the same. And also but it's important, you know, like just like a quick little anecdote, it's like, you know, we always think of like Latine or Latinx like as a race, right? And it's not a race, it's a culture, you know what I mean? It's an ethno group. We are of many races. There are many, like, you know, Asian, specifically Chinese people on the island of Puerto Rico. There's Black Puerto Ricans, i.e. my mother. My mother's a very dark-skinned Black woman. Like, you know, if you didn't know Black people spoke Spanish, you'd be very shocked that my mom is like, has this heavy accent and can like almost seemingly never speak English unless if she's ready to cuss someone out. You know what I mean? There's like indigenous presenting people. Like, I feel like Rudy looks very like mestizo and indigenous presenting, and like, you know, like, you know, well, it's like, it's beautiful. It's like a blended, like, you know, thing. And I think it's like important to also share that in TV and film too, that we are not all like, you know, monolith, and we're not all the same. But back to this being more mainstream and like hoping to see more of it, like, yeah, for sure. I'd love that to happen. I'd love that to be, I think that it's good for us, especially like, you know, like in the context of like, just like the United States, like, you know, we are also not a race, we are a place of many cultures, and like that's supposed to be what makes this place beautiful. So why not have things in different languages, especially since the majority of the population in the United States is now Latinx people. So that might be like a really good move for Hollywood to make. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're right. Is it like a third?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, dang, like half of New York is just Puerto Rican and Dominican, like straight up, like,
Yeah, I mean, we are conquering the United States back.
Right? It's, yeah, that's what you got to do. Take back what's yours. Take back that land. I'm all for that. I'm very like down with, like, you know, I don't know. Can we say down with Whitey?
Dear God, what choices?
Like, dude. You have to edit that out. Or don't. Like, I mean,
She never said that.
Just leave it in. No, but I think it's yeah. It seems like there's, like, you know, changes are happening slowly but surely, and I'm excited for it. I'd like to live to see it. So
I'll jump in before Danny cancels herself.
White people, oh no.
No, I think that there definitely has been a large array of different types of media coming from I would say in general brown people over the past few years. I think one of the things that I'm super conscious of in the projects that I put out there, you know, my first film, The Sentence, was about a Mexican-American family. It was about my Mexican-American family. And one of the things that I was very careful about with that story was not focusing on how Mexican, how brown, and how poor, and how Mexican, how brown, but I wanted you to see this family as a part of the fabric of this country. I wanted you to be able to relate to them on a human level and not continue to take a brown family and otherize them. So, you know, I'm very conscious of that in everything that I do. You know, I'm a big fan of George Lopez. I'm a big fan of John Leguizamo, who are, you know, West Coast and East Coast, and I love their work and I love what they do. But one of the things that I'm always, you know, conscious of in when I'm writing and when I'm creating is that between Los Angeles and New York, there are, you know, 47 other states in between, these flyover states that are filled with brown and Black people. And we are not represented solely by these two coasts. We have such a nuanced existence in this country that are more than just those two coasts. And so whenever I'm writing, I just sold a series to a network last year. And one of the things that they liked in my writing was that the main characters were Mexican American, but it wasn't about how Mexican American they were. They were simply people having this journey, having this thing. I just sold another feature film that is the same thing. It could be anybody playing these roles, but they happen to be Mexican American. And I think that that's what we have to continue to see, is that we can't just continue to otherize our characters and the people who look like us to please before I cancel myself, a white audience that is trying to continue to put us in a box. We have to continue to do that. And unfortunately, I think the way that continues to move forward is by us not being afraid to fail. You know, we have to be able to make these other projects that have the potential to fail because they are risks, because they may not touch on all of these things that are immediately commercial. But if at the core, they are good storytelling, you cannot deny that. But we cannot start our storytelling by putting ourselves in a box. We have to be willing to take those risks and be willing to fail, which is hard because I live my life as a filmmaker, as a director. In the back of my mind, I'm like, if this next movie fails, I might not get another one. They may not invest in me again. And that's tough. I think John Leguizamo just said recently, we don't get our Ishtar. We don't get our Dude, Where's My Car? We don't get these flops and then be able to come back and somebody's going to invest in our story again. We get immediately pushed to the side when we don't have a commercial success right off the bat. I've been very fortunate to continue to work in that sense, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is going to be the film where they figure out maybe I'm not that good, and I'm put off to the side because I don't get a chance to fail. But failing is exactly what we cannot be afraid to do. We have to take those risks and put people who look like us in every scenario possible. We cannot continue to be a part of the system that continues to otherize us. We are a fabric of this country, and we have to be part of representing that.
Everything you said, everything. Loved it.
Let's go fail.
And, I just want to clarify. I don't think you can get canceled for shading white people. And as the half white representative here, I'm going to say it's fine. I'm going to speak for all white people and say it's fine. They need it.
We won't let them.
Guys, I'm with you really 100%. I have to say, I have to go. I don't want to be rude with you, but I need to get out of here. Love you and keep going on the discussion. Thank you for inviting me to Cafecito. Bye.
Just to close, now that Clara is leaving us, I want to say that it is very exciting to have you all part of this conversation. Es una conversación que, por supuesto, aquí solamente como que estamos abriendo. This is a conversation that looks very different if we're having it in the context of LALIF and the United States, that if it's a conversation that's happening in like from the Latin American perspective. But this is a very important space, and I love the fact that we started this conversation, and I'm sure we can continue it. So thank you all so much for joining. Muchas gracias, Luisgé, al Instituto Cervantes.
Gracias a vosotros, ha sido un placer.
And during the festival, we can continue a conversation. So we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to meet you guys.